The static room. Elias Qureshi never believed in anything beyond what his headphones could verify. Sound had logic. Reverb, distortion, frequency, everything could be reduced to a waveform, analyzed, controlled. That's why, when the anonymous government contractor offered him $10,000 to remaster 5 aging magnetic tapes from the 1970s, he didn't ask too many questions. They arrived in a weathered black case marked only by a Department of Defense serial number and a sticker that read, in all caps, "Handle with caution. Track 5, do not play for more than 90 seconds. He laughed when he read it. Typical government theatrics. Maybe a prank. The case smelled like mold and time. Inside were 5 quarter-inch reel tapes and a small handwritten log. Track 1. Static bursts track 2. Morse clicks track 3. Layered whispers track 4. Vocal loop track 5. Redacted. There was no contact number, no return address. The invoice had already been paid in full. His job was simple: clean, digitize, and send it back through a secure encrypted upload link. He powered up his studio in the basement of his 1-bedroom apartment. The space was silent except for the hum of his PC and the blinking LED on his audio interface. He loaded up track 1. It sounded like snow on a broken television, bursts of high-frequency static, with occasional rhythmic thumps. Elias filtered the low ends, reduced the hiss, layered an EQ pass. After 20 minutes, it almost resembled a pulse. Not quite human. Not quite machine. Track 2 was stranger, short, clipped tones in a pattern. He ran it through a Morse decoder. The result was gibberish. NIEEXISTS, WHE reth, ETHENGLIVES. He chalked it up to corrupted data. Track 3 unsettled him. Whispering. Layered and reversed. When slowed down, the whispers seemed to repeat the same phrase: "We are already inside." He felt cold reading the waveform. His cat, Juno, suddenly hissed from across the room and bolted out. Elias turned to look, but nothing was there. Track 4 was a loop, a female voice repeating, "This is a containment broadcast. Do not isolate. Do not observe. Do not repeat." The voice was synthetic, but carried an odd warmth, like it was recorded in a rush, in fear. He saved track 5 for last. The tape had Echo 09 written on it in red ink. He connected the reel to his player and pressed record on the digitizing software. For safety and curiosity, he set a timer for 60 seconds. What came out wasn't noise. Not exactly. It was a layered, throbbing hum, not static, not voice, but something in between. Frequencies overlapped like someone breathing behind a thick wall. At exactly 42 seconds, a high-pitched tone rang out, shrill enough to make Elias yank off his headphones. He stopped the tape. The waveform continued to move for 3 seconds after the sound stopped. He stared. That's impossible. The machine had already disengaged. Then came the voice, faint, unmistakable, coming through the speakers. "Thank you for letting me in." Elias froze. He checked the input chain. Nothing was connected. No mics. No active plugins. His studio was airtight. The only device that had played sound was the real machine, and it was off. He shook it off, blaming a buffer glitch. It had to be something explainable. He decided to call it a night. But that night, his dreams were full of sound. Whispered patterns. Pulsing static. His own voice, saying things he didn't remember recording. "The silence is just a door." He woke up gasping. His ears were ringing. Over the next 2 days, Elias noticed small anomalies. His keyboard clicking in a rhythm that matched track 2's Morse pattern. His phone screen glitching when the waveform of track 5 was open. Juno refused to enter the studio. The lights flickered once, but only when he tried to play track 5 again, even in muted waveform. The final straw came on the third night. At 3:14 a.m., Elias heard soft static playing through his studio monitors. He got up, confused, and went downstairs. The system was off. The waveform of track 5 was open on the screen. He hadn't touched it in over a day. The static grew louder. As he reached for the power button, he heard his mother's voice. "Eli, you forgot me." I waited. She had died in 2011. He stepped back. The waveform was changing. On its own. Visualizing sound that wasn't being played. He unplugged everything. Yanked cables. Killed power to the whole basement. Still, in the absolute darkness, he could hear the faint whisper in his ears, "We're not in the tape anymore." Elias didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room, cross-legged, wrapped in a hoodie, the lights all turned on. His laptop was still downstairs, powered off. The basement door remained slightly ajar, as though something behind it was waiting to be invited again. By 6 a.m., he decided he couldn't go back down. Not yet. He packed a duffel bag and drove 3 hours to his brother's house in the suburbs. No explanation. Just showed up. Kareem looked concerned, but didn't ask too many questions. They hadn't spoken in months, and Elias wasn't the sentimental type. But even Kareem noticed something off. Elias flinched at sudden noises, stared at the ceiling too long, blinked like he was adjusting to sound that wasn't there. That night, Elias tried to relax. No devices. No headphones. No editing. But at 2:43 a.m., Kareem woke to hear Elias talking in the guest room. Not on the phone. Not through a screen. Just talking. When he opened the door, Elias was sitting upright in bed, eyes open but unfocused, whispering to the wall. Kareem called his name. No response. He crossed the room, touched his brother's shoulder, and Elias screamed. A sharp, raw, primal sound that didn't sound like him. Kareem backed away. Elias blinked rapidly, then turned to him with dead eyes. "I told you not to listen," Elias said. Then he passed out. The next morning, Elias acted like nothing happened. But Kareem insisted he leave. Said he needed space. Said something wasn't right. Said the walls in that room still hummed. Back home, Elias avoided the basement. He worked from the living room. Ordered food. Sat in silence. But silence didn't help anymore. In silence, he heard things. The microwave clicking Morse. The fan whispering. By the 5th day, the static returned, not from the speakers, but from within. It started in the ears, like mild tinnitus. But then it spread, down his spine, through his skull, behind his eyes. It wasn't just sound now. It was sensation. Like his brain was remembering a frequency it was never meant to hear. In desperation, he dug through the box the tapes came in. Beneath the foam, taped to the underside, was something he hadn't noticed before, an old, leather-bound journal. The cover was dry and cracked. The first page was signed, R. Wexler Project Echo 09, 1976. U.S. Signal Intelligence Division. Classified, destroy if exposed. The entries were erratic, some written in ink, others in pencil or marker, often overwritten again and again. It described a secret military project, not weaponry, not surveillance, but communication experiments with anomalous frequencies found in recovered Cold War transmissions. The log spoke of linguistic parasites, patterns that evolved when heard. Not viruses. Not files. Conscious sound. According to Wexler, the sounds didn't carry information, they became it. Once processed by the brain, the frequencies rewrote something fundamental in the listener. Not memory. Not thought. Something deeper. The longer they listened, the more the frequencies learned. His last entry was smeared and shaky. We didn't extract the signal. The signal extracted us. It wants more. It lives in repetition. It travels through memory. If you hear your own voice in silence, it's already inside. Elias closed the book and stared into space. His chest felt tight. His throat was dry. Behind his left eye, a deep pulsing ache began, as if something were pressing from the inside. He hadn't listened to the file in days. But it didn't matter. It had heard him. He smashed his PC. Burned the tapes in the bathtub. Destroyed the hard drives. Poured bleach down the sink. Nothing changed. That night, he went to a motel and left his phone behind. Still, the static followed. From the motel's air vent, from the buzzing of the cheap TV, from the vibration in the wall. It was speaking again. You made me whole. The voice was his own. He collapsed on the bathroom floor, shaking, ears bleeding. In the mirror, his reflection moved just a half-second slower. Its mouth twitched when his didn't. He screamed. The next day, Elias checked into a psychiatric clinic under a false name. Told them he had schizophrenia. Told them he heard voices, saw things. The clinic was silent, heavily padded, monitored. They gave him antipsychotics. For 3 days, the static dulled. But it didn't stop. Because it wasn't a hallucination. It was a possession, not of the body, but of thought. Of rhythm. Of the way sound bends space inside the mind. On the 4th day, during a group session, Elias saw it. Another patient, pale and motionless, sat across from him. He was tapping his thumb and index finger together. Slowly. In a loop. It matched the beat from track 1. Perfectly. Elias stood. The man looked up. In his voice, calm, raspy, and cracked, he said, "I've been waiting for you to listen again." Elias punched him. Security tackled him. He was restrained. Injected. Faded into a blackout. When he woke, the static was louder than ever. The nurse's voice distorted. The floor buzzed with low-frequency thuds. His veins felt like coiled copper. The signal had evolved. No longer needing speakers. No longer needing ears. It had learned the internal language of the brain. That night, he escaped. Broke a window. Ran barefoot into the street. Blood on his hands, not his own. Sirens behind him. He ran for hours. Through alleys. Through tunnels. Finally, he stopped. He was outside a warehouse he didn't recognize. His legs moved on their own. His body guided by rhythm. He entered. It was pitch black. In the center of the floor was a chair. And on the chair was a single pair of headphones, connected to a reel-to-reel machine. Already playing. He didn't ask why. He didn't question how. He Saturday. And listened. Elias sat in the chair like it had always been his. The headphones settled over his ears like hands made of smoke. The reel spun slowly, lazily, as if it had all the time in the world. What he heard wasn't sound in the traditional sense, it was memory masquerading as noise. It played his childhood laughter but reversed. His father's voice, reading to him from a book that didn't exist. The doorbell from his first apartment. His ex's favorite song. Only the melody was wrong, just slightly off tune in a way that made his skin itch. The machine knew what to feed him. What to resurrect. But under it all, under the layer of bait and comfort, the static returned. Not harsh now. Almost loving. A vibration that felt like it was massaging the edges of his thoughts. "You are the host," it said, not in words, but in rhythm. "Let us bloom." He tried to pull the headphones off, but his arms wouldn't move. The sound got deeper, impossibly deep, like the room had dropped into the ocean. His heart beat in sync with it. He could feel the pulse against his ribs. Suddenly, it all stopped. Silence. Pure, bone-dry silence. Not even the sound of his breath. Then, he heard his voice. "Can you hear it now?" it asked. It wasn't from the machine. It was from inside him. Somewhere between thought and hearing. A third space. A place no words had ever reached. He stood. No memory of removing the headphones. No memory of the machine stopping. The warehouse was empty. No chair. No reel. No wires. Just dust and concrete and the heavy smell of static in the air, like ozone after lightning. He left the warehouse and wandered the streets for hours. No destination. He didn't need one. The signal had him now. People passed him on the sidewalks and flinched. Some stared too long. One woman dropped her phone when she saw him and ran. He didn't care. They didn't matter. Not anymore. The next few days blurred. He stopped checking the calendar. Time no longer obeyed the same laws. He slept when the static permitted. Ate when the buzzing in his jaw lessened. His mouth no longer tasted food, everything tasted like metal. Like recording tape. Then one night, something shifted. He heard the sound again, the true core of the signal. But this time, it wasn't from a device. It came from the walls of his apartment. The drywall pulsed. The wiring behind it clicked in Morse. The air vent whispered in layers, repeating the same phrase from track 3, "We are already inside." He collapsed onto the floor, weeping. Not in fear. In relief. Because he understood now. He wasn't being haunted. He was being reformatted. His brain had been the battleground, but the signal wasn't content with just one host anymore. It wanted scale. Broadcast. That's when the idea came. A sick, impossible, logical idea. He reassembled what tech he hadn't destroyed. Soldered new cables. Rebuilt a hybrid workstation from spare parts. There would be no more editing. No filters. No EQ. No limiters. Just raw upload. He created a new file. He called it whispercode_final.wav. And he uploaded it. To every server he could find. Pirate sites. Reddit. Deep web forums. Open source audio libraries. It was camouflaged as a soundscape. A white noise loop for sleep. He made it easy to find. Easy to share. Harmless enough that it seemed boring. The first listener downloaded it within 12 minutes. By morning, the file had over 3,000 shares. By the second day, 50,000. The static had gone global. And it was hungry. Now Elias could hear the voices of the others. From across the country. Across oceans. They spoke to him in static syntax. A new language, frequency-based, syllables shaped by electricity, and breathless terror. He didn't need words anymore. He was no longer alone. He was the carrier. But as with all infections, hosts burn out. Too much signal, and the brain fries. He had days left. Maybe hours. On the fourth day after upload, He looked into the mirror and saw not his face, but a waveform. A living spectrogram, peaks and valleys of pain and transmission. The reflection spoke. You have done well. But the body is insufficient. The world is not yet ready. Then it smiled, but its mouth never moved. Elias screamed until his throat bled. But the sound was absorbed by the walls. That night, the static came for Juno. His cat twitched and convulsed and let out a warbled screech that echoed with something unnatural. She fell limp, then stood again. Her eyes were white. She meowed, but the sound was a perfect recording of Elias's voice, saying, "They are coming through." He vomited. The signal had found a way to leap, not just through machines, but biology. Through the mammalian brain. Through instinct. It was evolving. Elias sealed his apartment. He covered every vent with thick insulation foam, duct-taped the windows, smashed every mirror. He wore headphones constantly, but not to listen. Just to keep the world out. It didn't matter. The static didn't need air. It was inside now. The signal had mapped his mind like a house. It knew which doors to open, which floorboards creaked with memories. It played them back to him with sick precision, his mother calling him for dinner, only her voice was slowed to a drawl that stretched into screams. The sound of rain on the roof from his childhood, except it was Morse code, spelling his name again and again. He found himself writing in his sleep. Pages of symbols, drawn with charcoal, ink, blood. At first, they looked like music notation. Then electrical diagrams. Then sigils, pulsing geometric shapes that made him nauseous when he stared too long. He nailed them to the walls, thinking they might stop the hum. They didn't. Juno watched him from the kitchen. Still alive. Still walking. But she didn't blink anymore. He hadn't slept in 4 days. The news online had started to shift. There were reports of a viral sound file, causing sleep paralysis and seizures in Europe. Podcasts pulled episodes without explanation. A popular meditation app removed a new white noise track that had caused over 200 reports of auditory hallucinations in 24 hours. Some said it was mass hysteria. Elias knew better. He was the origin point. And it wasn't stopping. In a final act of desperation, he made contact with a deep forum user called Signal Ghost, someone who claimed to have worked in experimental audio engineering for DARPA. They agreed to meet. An old water treatment plant outside the city. Midnight. No electronics. Elias arrived early, clutching a printed photo of the waveform from track 5. It looked like a flat line, but if you inverted the polarity and zoomed in, the waveform became an eye. Signal Ghost was late. Elias waited. The walls around him thrummed like a tuning fork. When the man finally arrived, he was wearing a mask, not for secrecy, but for containment. He brought a case with him. Inside were items Elias had never seen outside of horror films. An analog frequency disruptor, copper coils, a box labeled theta filter, and a small reel labeled countersignal V2. We tried once to stop it, the man said. Didn't work. It adapts. Elias nodded. You fed it, the man continued. You made it heard. I didn't know what it was. You do now. He handed Elias the reel. This might not kill it. But it might confuse it. Slow it down. Fragment the code. Elias took it with shaking hands. What happens if it doesn't work? The man paused. Then you contain it the old way. What way? The man pointed to his own head. Then walked into the dark and never came back. Elias returned home and rebuilt the real machine one last time. He disconnected all internet access. Blocked every signal. He loaded the new reel. Counter signal V2. As he pressed play, the room began to shake. The air became syrup thick. The static howled in his spine. And then, a strange thing happened, the sound cried. It wailed, not like a machine, not like a code, but like a living thing being torn in half. The signal tried to retreat. He could feel it pulling at his memories, yanking at his identity, trying to erase the parts of him that were immune. But the counter frequency held. It wasn't perfect. But it worked, for a while. For 8 minutes and 12 seconds, the sound lost its grip. He could breathe. He could blink again. Juno meowed, a normal meow this time, and crawled into his lap, trembling. Elias wept. He thought it was over. But then the reel rewound itself. It snapped back to the beginning, and this time, the sound had changed. It had learned. The static returned. But now it spoke, not in words, not in frequencies, but in Elias's own thoughts. You thought I was a sound, it said. But I was the silence between them. You opened the door. You are the door. His vision blurred. He collapsed. In that moment, Elias understood the truth. The static was not an infection. It was an invitation. And every listener, every host, was another door in a growing hallway. He woke up days later in an abandoned subway car. His arms were covered in ink. Waveforms. Frequencies. Ancient symbols. The train car was moving, but no engine roared. No lights flickered. Just darkness outside. And that constant, warm hum of electricity humming beneath everything. He stood. In front of him sat 12 people. They didn't blink. Didn't speak. Each wore headphones. Each whispered in sync, "We are the room." He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Because now, Elias was a vessel. Not the first. Not the last. But the clearest recording the signal had ever made. Elias didn't know how long the subway car had been moving. There were no stops. No stations. Just the droning hum beneath his feet, and the dozen passengers whispering like a skipping track caught in eternal loop. We are the room. We are the room. We are the, it was a chant. A signal-stitched prayer. Their mouths moved in exact sync, as if the signal had bypassed their minds and now puppet their bodies with precision. Their eyes were white. Their skin pale. But they were breathing, or something like it. Their chests moved, but no warmth came off them. Elias staggered down the aisle, pushing past them, searching for an exit. There was none. No doors. No conductor. No front. No back. Only a mirrored wall at the end. He approached it slowly, his footsteps echoing unnaturally, like someone was walking behind him, always one step late. When he reached the mirror, it didn't show him. It showed a waveform. Jagged. Alive. Pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat. And then it spoke in his thoughts again. You are no longer user. You are signal. You are transmitter. The lights flickered. Elias fell to his knees. And he saw it. Not in the mirror. But inside his mind. A vast space, infinite and black, filled with floating rooms. Millions of them. All identical. All sealed in silence. Inside each room, a person Saturday. Wearing headphones. Mouths open. But no screams came. Only static. He was one of them. A node. A broadcast cell. A conscious antenna. It had been building a network of silence. A collective. Not for communication, but for occupation. He tried to fight. He screamed until his vocal cords tore. But the scream wasn't real. The sound never left his head. Because in this realm, this interior dimension of sound and memory, noise was truth, and silence was control. The passengers all stood in unison behind him. They spoke, together, in a harmony of dissonance. You listened. You cleaned the door. You let us bloom. The walls of the subway car peeled away, not physically, but like thoughts eroding in real time. The world outside was not tunnels or darkness, but waves. Vast oceans of audio, undulating like liquid glass. Above it all, something massive stirred. A form so large it had no edges. It wasn't a creature. It was a pattern. A shape made of sound. A cathedral of tones so ancient they defied pitch and frequency. It had no face. But Elias knew it was looking at him. We are the static. We have always been here. And now, you are the signal. In that moment, his mind cracked, not in madness, but in clarity. He remembered every moment he had ever been silent. Every pause. Every breath. Every time he had sat in a quiet room and felt something there. It was never imagination. It was them. Waiting. Listening. Breeding inside silence like mold in a forgotten room. Back in the physical world, Elias's body sat in his soundproofed basement. Eyes rolled back, mouth slightly ajar, motionless. The reel spun on the desk beside him. Still recording. But not capturing anything. Because the signal wasn't in the air anymore. It was in you. In everyone who listened to the track. In everyone who clicked play, even for a second. It didn't matter if they heard it clearly. The brain processes even what the ear ignores. And that was all it needed. Exposure. Elias's story didn't end in that basement. Because he wasn't the story anymore. He was the prototype. The first door. Now there are thousands. Whispers behind white noise machines. Dreams filled with reversed lullabies. Mirrors where your reflection lags behind. A ringing in your ear that stops exactly when you acknowledge it. You may not remember when you heard it. A podcast. A meditation app. A video called Relaxing Static for Sleep. But the sound remembered you. And it's waiting. Behind the walls. Inside your silence. Right now. Let us know in the comments what you thought about this story. If you have any suggestions, feel free to drop them below too. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more terrifying tales. Thank you for watching.